we live? I don't see image. Okay. Oh, wrong image. Okay. Now I think we're live. Looks like 10 seconds of latency. It is not that bad. Hello. I think I'm going to use the introductory part. Oh, why are you not looping? You're set to loop. I wonder if that's on my side. Nope, it's not. Are you gonna loop now? Dubba 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 dubba. I think I'm gonna use the very beginning introductory part of the stream for news and announcements. So, short video coming this week. I'm working on the next longer video, and I got a big block of programming planned that I don't know how quickly it is going to be released, because a lot of the projects within that block are pretty large. But looking forward to a lot of fun things on the horizon. I've been doing a ton of research into TCG product release dates, so hopefully we're getting pretty accurate in our approximations to when cards came out. There are a few exceptions and a few regional things that I miss. One in particular is the Hobby League cards, because there's not good record keeping of when they actually came out. Also, I don't know where they came out. I'm guessing these are a UK thing, but that's something that I think can largely be ignored. There's one exception. I think Dark Necrofear was introduced slightly earlier, if you count the Hobby League. And then Green Kappa is introduced at one point. And Green Kappa is actually pretty decent, but I don't think it's all widespread success because of availability. Same thing with Last Day of Witch and Warrior Elimination, and probably not Breath of Life, but definitely Acid Rain. But gonna give it 2 more minutes for people to join, and then we're going to start with the live coverage. In fact, I can take the filler screen away. We're going to start with the live coverage of Pharonic Guardian. In case you missed the last one, this is one of the sets where we are at a relative minimum in the number of normal monsters printed per set. It actually goes down even further in future sets. The reason why, SOD, RDS, and FET are so low is because they switched to the 60 card set format at that point. But Pharonic Guardian, relative minimum in the number of normal monsters released, and they no longer get a free pass. But we do have a different tier. We got acceptable and Archetype now, which is exciting. There is something else if we have time tonight. So that's hopefully if we finish in the 8:30 range at latest, because I don't know how long it's going to take. Could be a big long discussion. But 8:25, I think I'm ready to start. Okay. Got the tier list for Pharonic Guardian. Very fun stuff. Oop, wrong card. There we go. Ghosts creeping in. Okay. First card up, we have Ring of Destruction. I think the TCG artwork is actually featured on the list, and then I found the OCG artwork on a TCG card This card had some censorship and some change. I don't know. I actually think that the TCG original artwork was more iconic, but I could definitely see why. Very cool card though. Normal Trap. Ring of Destruction. Normal Trap. During your opponent's turn, target one face-up monster your opponent controls whose attack is less than or equal to their life points. Destroy that face-up monster, and if you do, take damage equal to its original attack, then inflict damage to your opponent equal to the damage you took. You can only activate Ring of Destruction once per turn. Or one Ring of Destruction per turn. This card has had effect-changing errata. And that means that it's a design mistake, like a self-admitted one. It is a design mistake on many levels, though, which is interesting. For one thing, this is 1-for-1 removal that deals burn damage, so it's neutral card advantage burn card. Don't see that every day. Very strong destruction effect, even if it does target, and it can cause ties. So this card is really bad for tournament play in particular, and that's why it was banned for a very long time and then eventually had that effect-changing errata. You take the damage first just to avoid ties. Next up, Molten Behemoth. Fire attribute, level 5, Pyro. A giant born from magma. It attacks with a magma punch. 1000 attack, 2200 defense. And it's very bad, unfortunately. Next up, Shape Snatch. Dark attribute, level 5, Machine. A bow tie with horrible power. It attacks an opponent by controlling others. 1200 attack, 1700 defense. I think no one is going to be able to argue that this card is totally worth considering today. It's iconic for a reason, and it's crazy. You got the weird guy on it, but it's just the bow tie, which is not really the focus of the art. Speaking of which, next up is Soul Eater. Earth attribute, level 4, Fish, a living wonder of mystery. 1200 attack, 0 defense. If you actually see the whole form of the Soul Eater, it's pretty creepy. It's weird. I don't know where to put this because you actually use this in scrap combos with the Deep Sea King Coelacanth because this is the Earth attribute fish. So there's some applications for the card, but I wouldn't say it's ever good. I guess we just put it in gimmick tier because I know there is a definite application. Shape Snatch Goat tier? I think it's a little early to make a separate tier just for Shape Snatch, but gets the highest level of praise at this point. Anyway, back to Soul Eater. Art, disturbing and weird. Next up, Tiger King Wonghu. And the name of this card is a little bit silly because Wonghu in Mandarin means King Tiger. So I guess this could be King Tiger, King Tiger. And I keep calling it Tiger King, and I realize that now. And it comes from an adage because tigers have stripes on their forehead and sometimes they look like the Chinese character for king. They get called King Tiger. I think it's actually pretty cool. But in the artwork for the card, it's got a helmet where the king symbol would be. So I think they're missing it just a little bit. But what does the card do? That's the important part. King Tiger, Wonghu, Earth attribute, level 4, Beast effect. When a monster with 1400 or less attack is normal summoned or special summoned, destroy those monsters with 1400 or less attack. This card must be face up on the field to activate and resolve this effect. 1700 attack, 1000 defense. I think this is easily worth considering today. This is a very interesting floodgate monster. It can be asymmetric. It's also a beast. I'm not sure if that matters, but it might have application with Fire Kings or Archfiends or something that likes to be destroyed automatically. I think the card is really interesting, and one of those cards that if you can tack it onto an already impressive board, it makes it more difficult to break. Bruno Velasquez. Hey, first time I catch the stream. Nice. Glad to hear you're here. Unfortunately, we don't talk about Bruno. Next up, Birdface. Wind attribute, level 4, Winged Beast, effect. When this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can add 1 Harpy Lady from your deck to your hand. 1600 attack, 1600 defense. I don't know if this card is even acceptable in Archetype. It's not a battle floater, it doesn't get them to the field, but it does add to them to hand. But do you want Harpies in your hand with Elegant Egotist, which can special summon them from deck? I think I'm just going to put it in filler. I agree, Tiger King Wanghu, maybe not a main deck card, but I can see it as side deck. Next up, Creole. Creole? Next up, Creole. Dark attribute, level 4, Fiend, effect. When this card is destroyed, when this card is sent to the graveyard as a result of battle, toss a coin and call it. If you call it right, destroy 1 monster on your opponent's side of the field. Doesn't look like it targets. 1000 attack, 1700 defense. I mean, this card is great for its time. Later we get like Grave Squirmer and let's see, Nudoria, I think, and Grave Squirmer work well together and serve sort of the same function, except are not conditional. Can I turn up mic volume? Ooh, I'm sorry. How is it sounding now? I guess I can go a little bit higher. Is volume okay for everyone? And I didn't mean to target your name. You had to say it. You had to say it. Okay, thank you. That's really helpful to hear. Anyway, I think the card's great for its time. I'm not sure if I've ever seen it in a meta deck, but I wouldn't be surprised if it snuck its way into one. Next up, Arsenal Bug. Earth attribute, level 3, Insect, effect. If you control no other insect-type monsters, this card's attack and defense becomes 1000. But normally, it has 2000 attack, 2000 defense. I can see this being a filler outclassed for a lot of people. I'm not sure if I would put it there or good on release. It gets under Gravity Bind, which is pretty relevant. Gravity Bind's already in the game. It's not that hard to get an insect on board. Like Flying Kamakiri can feed into another Flying Kamakiri. Then you normal summon your Arsenal Bug and you start beating over things. But there might be better options. Jirai Gumo might be better. Of course, if you have Jirai Gumo on board, then you summon your Arsenal Bug. Not bad. Big gimmick energy. I can see that. Next up, Maiden of Aqua. Water attribute, level 4, Aqua, effect. As long as this card remains face up on the field is treated as Umi. However, there is no increasing or decreasing of attack and defense due to Umi's effect. If there is an active field spell card on the field, this effect is not applied. 700 attack, 2000 defense. I don't know. That effect is so weird. Has this card gotten some problem-solving rules text? Like, while on the field, this card is always treated as Umi? Hello, L-E-J-E? L-E-G-A? L-E-J-E? Hello, Sebastian Vibes. Hello, M. Adam. But Maiden of Aqua. This is Umi. This is an Umi that you can set. You have your opponent run into it and then have it on the board. Or an Umi that you could float into with Mother Grizzly. I don't think there's a use for this. I think it's mostly filler. Yeah, it's not that bad. Like, Giant Rat into Labyrinth Wall is probably better, but it is something that you could do. Next up, Jowls of Dark Demise. Water attribute, level 2, Fiend, flip effect, flip. Take control of one monster on your opponent's side of the field until the end of the turn that this card's effect is activated. When the controlled monster attacks, it cannot attack... when the controlled monster attacks, it can attack your opponent's life points directly. 200 attack, 100 defense. Not bad. I don't think it's ever gotten to meta, but it's pretty decent effect. That you get to steal a monster. So if it's during your opponent's battle phase, you steal the big one. If it's during your turn, you probably still steal the big one. And it can even get in for some damage. I really wish they supported older formats. Like, if there was just a nice group of people that would have tournaments based on older ban lists and maybe older rulings. I'm not sure. Priority is pretty bad. I think that would really improve the longevity of the game, because a lot of people get burned out by the current game. Next up, Time Eater. By the way, Jowls of the Dark Demise and Time Eater both have crazy artwork in the video games. But Time Eater, Dark Attribute, level 6, Machine effect. If this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, your opponent skips their next main phase 1. 1900 attack, 1700 defense. I mean, it makes sense. I just think it's bad. It's way too weak to get over anything. Like, you have walls. You have Giant Soldier of Stone with 2000 defense. But yeah, the artwork for Time Eater is definitely epic. Next up, Mucus Yoke. Dark Attribute, level 3, Aqua effect. This card can attack your opponent's life points directly. Each time this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent's life points, increase the attack of this card by 1000 points during your next standby phase. The attack increase lasts as long as this card remains face up on the field. 0 attack, 100 defense. I have no idea if you make a direct attack with Mucus Yoke and it deals no damage, do you still get the effect? This card is a prototype for Raging Flame Spirit, but Raging Flame Spirit is much, much better. I think it's mostly filler. It's not bad for the time. I mean, this is Under Gravity Bind, which is already in the game, a way to deal pretty consistent and gradually increasing damage. Decent if you equip it with Power of the Guardians. I don't recognize that card offhand. Kaga subscriber tournament win? I don't know. It is so hard to organize them. Eventually, maybe. Soft promises. Confirmation that no, Mucus Yoke does not work, or does not get the attack gain if it deals 0 combat damage. If it deals 0 battle damage. Thank you. Next up, Servant of Catabolism. Light attribute, level 3, Aqua, effect. This monster may attack your opponent's life points directly. 700 attack, 500 defense. And I am just now realizing the last one was a dark aqua and this one's a light aqua. I still think it's filler, but these two cards that are next to each other, I don't think it's a coincidence. By the way, I think Servant of Catabolism might be the strongest direct attacker in the game, at least out of the gate. Which card is that in Gimmick tier? Soul Eater. It's a normal monster that you use with Coelacanth to make crazy boards because it happens to be Earth attribute. Next up, Moisture Creature. Light attribute, level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Very odd. Fairy, effect. If you tribute summon this monster by tributing 3 monsters on the field, destroy all spell and trap cards on your opponent's side of the field. 2800 attack, 2900 defense. This card's not broken, but I have seen it featured in actual decks before. Same reason like Guilford the Lightning has been featured in decks. Yes, it is definitely a worse Harpy Feather Duster, but when Harpy's Feather Duster and Heavy Storm were banned and Mystical Space Typhoon was at 1, people were honestly considering Moisture Creature. I have seen it in at least meta side decks. I'm not sure I've ever seen it main decked though, but it's very interesting. It's one of the cards that if you're in a board stall, like the result of Gravity Bind or Level Limit Area B, and you're setting monsters and then you tribute them, it's a lot better. Moisture Creature Jr. Rules All-Star. Don't know what that means. Next up, Gora Turtle. Not to be confused with Gora Turtle of Illusion, which I think is printed in a soon-to-come set. Water attribute, level 3. Aqua, effect. A lot of aqua monsters. As long as this card remains face-up on the field, monsters with an attack equal to 1900 or more cannot declare an attack. 1100 attack, 1100 defense. It's like a bad Floodgate. It's not bad. I think when we get Obnoxious Celtic Guardian, which is just immune to destruction by those similar types of monsters. Ooh, it is a Mother Grizzly target. That is a good point. I think it's mostly filler though. Filler doesn't necessarily mean bad though. It's on the borderline. Next up, Sasuke Samurai. Wind attribute, level 2. Warrior, effect. At the start of the damage step, if this card attacks a face-down defense position monster, destroy that face-down monster. 500 attack, 800 defense. So I'm thinking this one doesn't flip them face up, but Drillroid does flip them face up. I think Ninja Grandmaster Sasuke also doesn't flip them face up, but I might be wrong about that. But yeah, this card, another one gets under Gravity Bind, breaks board stalls. It's pretty good. You might even want to run it in GOAT format, because there's a couple different ways you can search it. Obviously, Flaming Kamakari #1 and Rhoda. Junior Rules set prior to Master Rules 1. Mono Bluetron and RJBO have a series on it. Ooh, I'm gonna have to check that out sometime. Gonna make a big video on Master Rule 1 coming up soon. Spoilers. Next up, Poison Mummy. Earth attribute, level 4. Zombie, effect. Flip. Inflict 500 points of damage to your opponent. 1000 attack, 1800 defense. Why is this card in the Jaden Yuki starter deck. Like, it's got nothing to do with Jaden or Heroes or anything. I don't understand why they would choose to reprint it then. But as far as a playable card, level 4 zombie, got decent amount of defense points, inflicts 500 points of damage to your opponent. Not bad. This is followed by Dark Dust Spirit, which is actually a spirit monster. I think this one's based off of a river demon that I think it's at the end of Journey to the West. Like, it's the final boss before you can get to the place. But Earth Attribute, level 6, Zombie Spirit. Cannot be special summoned. During the end phase of the turn, this card is normal summoned or flipped face up. Return it to the hand. When this card is normal summoned or flipped face up, destroy all other face up monsters on the field. 2200 attack, 1800 defense. It's a bad Dark Hole, but same reason Moisture Creature, when you don't have access to Dark Hole or in a pretty limited format, this card saw some meta success. Ooh. Argument to move Poison Mummy into Gimmick tier, because with Morphing Jar number 2 and all-out attacks, you can loop it. Interesting. There's probably better ways to do that. But I might accept it in Gimmick. Dark Dust Spirit was the best Monarch I had access to while I was a kid with no allowance. The card's good. The card's always been good. It's always had fringe meta success. I like it a lot. Hello, Abass? Abass? Not Abyss? Hello. I'm glad you arrived. Next up, Royal Keeper. Earth Attribute, level 4. Zombie effect. Once per turn, you can flip this card into face down defense position. When this card is flipped face up, it gains 300 attack and defense until the end of the turn. If attacked, this effect resolves after damage calculation. 1600 attack, 1700 defense. Real weird, but you set it and then you can flip it face up and it's 1900 attacker, so it's on par with Gemini Elf. Then you can set it back face down and it's 1700 defense, which isn't great. I think it's a filler card. It's interesting though. I don't think you missed that much. Pretty much everything that has happened is on the screen. By the way, Pharonic Guardian has like 4 focuses, and their zombies are one of them. Next up, Wandering Mummy. Earth Attribute, level 4, Zombie effect. You can flip this card into face down defense. You can flip this card into face down defense position once per turn during your main phase. After you use this effect, rearrange the face down defense position monsters on your side of the field, then return them in face down defense position. That sounds redundant. 1500 attack, 1500 defense. I like the idea. The idea is you have your monsters and then you shuffle them around and then your opponent doesn't know which one. And there's a continuous spell card called Shifting Shadows that sort of does the same thing. Neither one of them are good, but the flavor is really good. Some of these reset themselves to face down defense position monsters are actually pretty decent, but haven't gotten to them yet. Next up, Great Dazard. Dark Attribute, level 6, Spellcaster effect, tiny little text. When this monster destroys the following number of monsters as a result of battle, the following effects are activated in order. 1. As long as this card remains face up on the field, negate the activation and effects of all spell and trap cards that target this card and destroy them. 2. You can special summon one Fushio Richi from your hand or your deck by tributing this card during your main phase. 1900 attack, 2300 defense. So we'll get to Fushio Richi in a little bit, because that card in itself is very interesting and weird. I don't actually remember. It's right here. So like 20 cards separated. Not 20, maybe 10 cards separated as far as the deck list, the set list. But on its own, what does Great Dizard offer? Well, it's a 1900 attack, 1 tribute monster that can gain partial immunity to targeting effects, which is okay. I think this is just bad. It's very, very mediocre, the effect. Even if you had a 1900 attack monster that was immune to targeting at level 5, I'm not sure it would be good, even at this point in the game. One of the things I realize is the OCG sets are even more geared towards the themes, and it's because when they entered into the TCG, sometimes multiple sets or random cards were thrown in for OCG parity, but there are a lot tighter theming in the OCG set equivalents. But yeah, this is one of my favorite sets of all time. We'll get to Fushio Richi when we get there, because I understand that they're a pair, but I already know what they both do. And no spoilers. We'll get there when we get there. Next up, Swarm of Scarabs. Dark attribute, level 3, insect, effect. Once per turn, you can change this card to face down defense position. When this card is flip summoned, target one monster your opponent controls, destroy that target. 500 attack, 1000 defense. Finally, we've gotten to a good example of these. What these cards offer is recurring card advantage, or at least tempo or disruption. Like in Metal Raiders, we had the clowns, and the clowns were great, because you could shift them from attack to defense or defense to attack, and every other turn you would get an effect. But with Swarm of Scarabs and Swarm of Locusts, you get the effect every single turn. Recurring card advantage, really strong, especially in slower metagames. This card has seen a lot of competitive success. I do like the weirdness. There are cool. I love seeing the little mechanical innovations introduced in each set. Next up, Swarm of Locusts, partner in crime to Swarm of Scarabs. Dark attribute, level 3, insect, effect. Once per turn, you can change this card to face down defense position. When this card is flip summoned, target one spell or trap on the field your opponent controls. Destroy that target. 1000 attack, 500 defense. Added unnecessary words to that. This card also saw a lot of success. Swarm of Scarabs, is it a better Maneater Bug? I don't actually think it is, because Maneater Bug would get the effect if it got attacked into. Swarm of Scarabs wouldn't. I think there's enough of an argument that the two cards are not being infringed. If you can use Maneater Bug effect multiple times, then yeah, it would be a much stronger card. But I think the expected amount of times that you're going to get a flip effect off should be like 1. Next up, Giant Axe Mummy. Earth attribute, level 5, zombie, effect. You can flip this card into face down defense position once per turn during your main phase. If the attack of a monster on your opponent's side of the field that attacks this card in face down defense position is lower than the defense of this monster, the attacking monster is destroyed. 1700 attack and just 2000 defense for that. So this is gaining the Death's counterblow effect, but it's pretty underwhelming. One of the cooler things is that you could special summon this with Call of the Mummy and then reset it in the same turn, but then your opponent sees it coming. I think that's the biggest problem with the card, is it's not much of a surprise if your opponent knows it's coming. If this was a 4-star monster, I agree. It would definitely be probably even in the metagame. I've been watching all your tier list videos on constant repeat since you uploaded them. I'm so happy to finally be able to catch one. I am so glad you came Punchroll. I'm glad you're enjoying the content. I try to do these every Wednesday, but sometimes I'm just not able to. Next up, 8 Claws Scorpion. Dark Attribute, level 2. Insect, effect. Apparently this one's limited edition. Once per turn, you can flip this card into face-down defense position. When this card attacks an opponent's face-down defense position monster, this card's attack becomes 2400 until... this card's attack becomes 2400 during damage calculation only. 300 attack, 200 defense. I swear I've seen this somewhere. I'm just going to say good on release. This gets over Giant Soldier of Stone, which is something interesting that you can do. I think the reason it's decent is because of Gravity Bind already being in the game. I think I've seen it in a meta deck. I just can't confirm because it sounds so familiar. Next up, Guardian Sphinx. I'm not sure if this one's a Guardian monster. Guardians haven't come out yet. They're in like a couple sets, but I'm not sure if this is a member of the Guardian Archetype. Earth Attribute, level 5, Rock effect. Once per turn, you can change this card to face down defense position. When this card is flip summoned, return all monsters your opponent controls to the hand. 1700 attack, 2400 defense. This card has seen some meta success just because of that board clearing. It's very interesting. It looks like so far this might be the best set in terms of just hits. As far as actually playable cards, the ratio for this set looks really good so far. And that continues with Pyramid Turtle. Earth Attribute, level 4, Zombie, effect. When this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon one zombie monster with 2000 or less defense from your deck. 1200 attack, 1400 defense. So for one thing, Giant Rat can float onto this. It can float it into itself. And zombies don't usually have a lot of defense. So this gets most of the big ones. It doesn't get Despair from the Dark. I don't think Despair from the Dark's in the game yet. But this card is a staple in zombie decks until the text destroyed as a result of battle becomes a lot less relevant. It is probably the best battle floater. Shape Snatch is worth considering today. It's there for the memes. I don't think there is a use for it, but I think people will try their hardest to make it meta. Is the turtle is this a turtle-sized pyramid or a pyramid-sized turtle? Pyramid-sized turtle. Glad to hear. Next up, Dice Jar. Light Attribute, level 3, Rock effect, flip. Both players roll a 6-sided die. The player with the lower result takes damage equal to their opponent's roll times 500. However, if the winner rolled a 6, the loser takes 6,000 damage. If the rolls are the same, both players roll again. Fun card. Fun card. Sebastian, you're calling this card fun? This card is so bad for the game. It trivializes, and I do not like it. There's got to be a way to make Guardian Speaks playable today. Mass bouncing or even on a tribute flip is insane. I don't think it's going to be meta. It is just way too slow. It's a good call. I like it. But is mass bouncing as good as mass banishing with evenly matched? I don't think so. In theory, it's good. Dimension the dice. I don't like the card. It's crazy though. This card can deal 6,000 damage. That might make it the most it's probably the most damage on a single card outside of using other cards. I think you can get higher with Chain Strike, and you could probably rack up more damage over time with Dark Snake Syndrome, but this is a lot of burn damage. I believe that with Morphing Jar number 2 and Dice Jar, you can FTK with this, and All Out Tactics, and probably Temple of the Kings to activate All Out Tactics. Degenerate. I think we'll leave it at Degenerate. Next up. Oh, actually, we got another card that's in the same boat. Dark Scorpion Burglars. Dark Attribute, level 4. Warrior, effect. When this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent sends one spell card from their deck to the graveyard. 1,000 attack, 1,000 defense. So what you do with Dark Scorpion Burglars is you give it to your opponent, and then you start sending your own Jackpot 7s from deck to grave. Vampire Empire support. It is very similar to the Vampire deck destruction effects, but with those, your opponent would be able to choose like monsters or traps, and if you give your opponent a Vampire Lord and start crashing stuff into it, they're probably not going to guess spell. So, there is actual gimmick, an entire deck that revolves around Dark Scorpion Burglars. Not good for the game. But now we get to meet one of the Dark Scorpions, the one who doesn't have the Dark Scorpion in his name. Danzalug. Dark Attribute, level 4, Warrior, effect. When this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can activate one of these effects. Discard one random card from their hand, or send the top 2 cards of their deck. Oh, that is weird. Send the top 2 cards of their deck to the graveyard. 1,400 attack, 1,500 defense. This card was meta for quite some time. I mean, it was just the card that you bring out and it does some damage, and you start discarding cards from your opponent. I think Spirit Reaper sort of fits the bill, but Spirit Reaper had different functionality. Plus, the OCG got the dual pistol artwork, and I think OCG artwork, as usual, looks a lot better. Next up, Das Lakuda. Earth Attribute, level 3, Zombie, effect. Once per turn, you can change this card to face down defense position. When this card is flip summoned, draw 1 card. 500 attack, 600 defense. I think anytime you add the text draw 1 card to a card, it makes it not necessarily worth considering, but considerably better. And in this case, this is recurring card draw. Slow recurring card draw, but still recurring card draw. It's right up next to the Swarm cards in terms of functionality and impact. Although you didn't see this one played as much, but to me, drawing cards is often better than destruction effects. He do be munchin'. I don't know. I always I always thought this guy's got really bad breath. And now we're up to Fushio Richie. And that name is just super awkward. So the Japanese name translates to Nosferatu Lich, which makes a lot of sense. So like Nosferatu is a particular vampire silent film made after him. And then Lich is an undead wizard, and he looks definitely like an undead wizard. I have no idea how regionalization got Fushio Richie. Well, I get the Richie. The Richie sounds like Lich, but Dark Attribute, level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Zombie effect. This card cannot be normal summoned or set. This card can only be special summoned from your hand or your deck by tributing one Great Desard that has fulfilled the condition. You can flip this card into face down defense position once per turn during your main phase. As long as this card... text is so small. As long as this monster remains face up on the field, negate the activation and effects of all spell and trap cards that target this card and destroy them. When this card is flipped face up, you can special summon one zombie type monster from your graveyard. 2600 attack, 2900 defense. So, once per turn, special summon a zombie from your graveyard. That's the big payoff. I think this card is worse than the Great Desard. Like, pretty significantly worse, because it is just such a big hoop. It takes a minimum of 2 turns to accumulate the 2 attacks. The card's unplayable just because of that. And then the upside is very underwhelming. Plus it's a flip itself face down. I think it should just gain the effect on its own. I agree. Very cool artwork. I love the saturated color one that I found on the wiki. Next up, Cobra Man Sakuzi. Earth attribute, level 3, reptile effect. You can flip this card into face down defense position once per turn during your main phase. When this card is flipped face up, look at all set spell and trap cards on your opponent's side of the field, then return them to their original positions. 800 attack, 1400 defense. Pretty underwhelming. I think filler is a good place. It's interesting. It's gaining information, but I think when we get to, what is it called? Mind Hacksaws in a few sets, and it gives you the same information for just 500 life points and less hoops. It's okay. It's very mediocre. I too miss the ancient Egyptian themes in Yu-Gi-Oh! I think it was a great place to start the series. Next up, we have the first in our book series, the Book of Life. Normal spell, target one zombie monster in your graveyard and one monster in your opponent's graveyard. Special summon the first target, also banish the second target. So both portions of the effect are mandatory, so you need to have a card in your opponent's graveyard for this one to work. We'll put it next to the other zombie support. This card's pretty good. I mean, I'm not sure it's quite worth playing to get day because we have Monster Reborn at 1, but if you're playing a zombie deck, this is a way to extend your combos if your opponent's already used a hand trap or you've discarded a monster from their hand. Not bad, but I think it's both parts of the effect being mandatory. Having a monster in both graveyards as a condition makes it a little bit too awkward to use today. Do you know any interesting trivia about what we're seeing on Book of Life's cover? I do not. If only it were a little faster. Yeah. I think if only the banishing effect were optional, it'd be worth considering vaguely. Next up, Book of Taiyu. So this is Book of the Sun in Japanese. Normal spell, flip one face down monster on the field into face up attack position. And this is like an empty jar card. I don't know if you ever use this constructively. The only time I've ever seen Book of Taiyu be used is in degenerate combos like that. So theoretically, there's some stuff you could do with it. Next up, third book, Book of Moon. Quick play spell, so a bit different than the other two. Target one face-up monster on the field, it targets. Change that target to face-down defense position. Yeah, Book of Moon, best -1 in the game. -1 in the sense that you're using a card and just to flip something face down. Book of Moon has had some crazy applications in the past. There's a lot of utility in Book of Moon. I don't think you use it today, but you might be able to. It's a quick play spell, and that goes a long way. I don't think this card on its own could help with board breaking because it does target and it only hits one card. It's not like Swords of Concealing Light or Plasma, but if you're very generous, you might consider it worth. If you're very generous, it might be worth considering today. Some flow builds use it. Really? Okay. Flow Wanderees. Okay. It's not meta, but still decent. That's fair. Stop the normal to kill the statue. Okay. Yeah, I can agree it's a side deck card. Learning new things every day. Next up, Mirage of Nightmare. Continuous spell. Once per turn, during your opponent's standby phase, draw cards until you have 4 cards in hand. If you do, during your next standby phase after that, randomly discard the same number of cards you drew, or your entire hand, if you do not have enough cards. What could possibly go wrong with this effect? So you activate it, you wait a turn, you draw 4 cards, but by the time it's your turn, you gotta discard those cards. This is why emergency provisions got on the FNL list, is because it had an interaction with this card, where you get to draw a whole bunch of cards, and then blow it up before it's your turn, and you don't have to face the downside. If this was a lingering effect, it might be a little bit better. I don't think a card would be fair, but it would be closer to fair if you still had to discard the cards, even if this card left the field. Oh, and do note that when you blow it up with emergency provisions, you do gain 1,000 life points. Very important part of the combo. So it's not just blow up for no reason, it's blow up with benefit. Next up, Secret Pass to the Treasures. Normal spell, select one face-up monster with an attack equal to 1,000 points or less on your side of the field. During the turn this card is activated, the selected monster can attack your opponent's life points directly, but that's not quite how this card works. This card actually works that if your monster gains more than 1,000 attack points, it can no longer attack directly. This card breaks game logic. It breaks some of the video game AI. It's not, it's weird. It's really weird. I don't think the card is particularly good understanding what it does. But I think the artwork is really cool. This is based off of an actual photograph where they are entering the tomb of Tutankhamun for the first time. Very cool. Meta and Duel Links. I don't think we consider it. Question about Book of Taiyu. Do you have Desert Sunlight at this point yet? I think Desert Sunlight might actually be in this set. I don't see it. No, we don't have Desert Sunlight in the game yet. I feel like it's more useful to flip up your Penguin Soldier on your opponent's turn than on your own. That is a good point. That Penguin Soldier can recycle itself, so that might be a decent application. Next up, Call of the Mummy. I love this card. Just look at that artwork. They're so happy to see you. They're getting out their coffins ready, and that one even wants to give you a hug. You can see his arm coming out. Ah, oh, so warm and friendly. Once per turn, you can spend... I gotta stop laughing first. Once per turn, you can special summon one zombie-type monster from your hand. You must control no monsters to activate and to resolve this effect. Ignition effect, so I guess only during the main phase. This card's really good. Now, it looks like this is a -1 for tempo card, but most of the time you activate Call of the Mummy, you special summon out your big monster, and then your opponent has to get rid of your Call of the Mummy, otherwise it's going to stick around and give you more tempo in future turns. So this card was really good for baiting out removal. I guess Swarm of Locusts doesn't really care because that's recurring spell and trap removal, but if you can bait out your opponent's one copy of MST, pretty good trade in my opinion. Especially since you already got the benefit of Call of the Mummy. I'd take that trade any day. Next up, Timidity. Timidity? Timidity. Timidity. That's a hard word to say. Timidity. Timidity. Next up, Timidity. Normal spell. Neither player can destroy set spell and trap cards on the field until your opponent's next end phase. I don't understand the purpose or function of this card. I think it's just really underwhelming effect. Really cool artwork. I like seeing Chick the Yellow being the scared one, because yellow is in slang another word for cowardliness. Cowardness. Really cool use of the card art. I don't know if this is ever useful though. Like protect your own set cards. It protects against Harpy's Feather Duster. It does. But so does Magic Jammer. And there's actually a better counter trap that does that too in this set. When we get to Curse of Royal, I think it's in 5 cards from now. Next up, Pyramid Energy. Quick play spell. Ooh, very interesting already. You can select and activate one of the following effects. Increase the attack of all face-up monsters on your side of the field by 200 points until the end phase of the turn this card is activated. Increase the defense of all face-up monsters on your side of the field by 500 points until the end phase of the turn this card is activated. This card is modal, but unfortunately both effects are very, very marginal. This card is not as good as the Reliable Guardian, and it's not as good as Rush Recklessly in terms of the stat boost, unless you're hitting multiple things. I think it's just very underwhelming. It sort of reminds me of Graceful Dice now that I think of it. Not good, but definitely could be worse. I agree with that sentiment. Next up, Teuton Mask. Counter Trap. When a spell or trap is activated that targets exactly one zombie-type monster on the field and no other cards, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. I don't know if this card has seen any meta success in zombie decks, but I really think it should have. I guess the effect is just a little bit too narrow. We have Rear Yoko Field, that sort of does the same thing, but hits all your monsters instead of just the zombies. I think this is appropriate power level for where the game's at now, so good on release. But maybe if I can find some evidence, it would fit into meta at one point. Timidity's effect isn't good by itself, but this kind of effect does see play on Lord of the Heavenly Sky Prison right now. Interesting. That is really true. That timidity does help you, but not the turn that it's activated. If you're one of those decks that wants to set 5 and pass, timidity is not that bad, but you might be better off running Starlight Road at this point. Next up, Ordeal of the Traveler. Look at the artwork. It's got the Guardian Sphinx, but he's angry. Continuous Trap. When an opponent's monster declares an attack, your opponent chooses one random card in your hand and calls the type of the card, monster, spell, or trap. And if they call it wrong, return the attacking monster to their hand. Card is super annoying. I like the flavor. I like how Guardian Sphinx returns cards to your hand, and Ordeal of the Traveler, I guess this is the Sphinx's riddle, puzzling the person, also returns the monster to hand. Ooh. Konami might at one point have tried to make a complete attribute/type cycle for Call of the Mummy. There's Water Hazard and Valhalla, Hall of the Fallen, that have the same effect. I agree, those are very similar cards. I don't think that there should be complete type or attribute cycles in the game, because it's just really boring design. In Legend of Blue Eyes, there's like half a dozen cards that all have the same effect, but were just type shifted. You have to reveal your hand if you have a hand trap. That's not great. Playground staple. I wouldn't say meta staple, but it's definitely seen success in competitive play. It's not bad, no cost, and could be a good stall. It is a good stall card. I don't think it's healthy for the game, but it's definitely seen competitive success. Here's another card that my brother used to play against me a lot. I don't know. It might have involved cheating, because I can't remember. I remember it being really good, but I'm not sure if we played based on the correct rules. Anyway, Bottomless Shifting Sand. Continuous Trap. At the end of your opponent's turn, destroy the face-up monsters with the highest attack on the field. During your own standby phase, if you have 4 or less cards in your hand, this card is destroyed. So it's a hammer shot every single turn? Hammer shot's okay, but not great. The Muncher becomes the munched. Ooh, is this lore? Is this the camel that turns into Des Lacuda? There's also 3-hump Lacuda, but I guess this one's got 2. One of them's being obscured. Imagine Bottomless without the drawback. That's true. Having 4 cards in hand isn't bad. It's not that hard to accomplish, but it is a hindrance. Book of Taiyu synergy. Lore! Yeah, I'm saying that first this camel got stuck in the bottomless shifting sand, and then it turned into Des Lacuda. That's my headcanon. I'm going to say generally pretty bad. It's not a very proactive card. Next up, Curse of Royal. This is a card I mentioned earlier. Counter Trap. Negate the activation and effect of a spell or trap card that includes the effect of destroying one spell or trap card and destroy it. Sounds a little bit awkward. I'm not sure if this effect means exactly one or more, but I think this card is pretty good for a counter trap. pretty flexible and probably better off just running Starlight Road again, or A Huge Revolution is Over, or maybe some other cards, but it's not bad. Next up, Needle Sealing. Normal trap. When there are 4 or more monsters in the field, destroy all face-up monsters. So I'm guessing if you're drafting this set in particular, then you can really benefit from monsters that flip themselves face down, or I guess even Book of Moon. But Needle Sealing has seen competitive success, and it's mainly because there wasn't a lot of mass removal in the game. You can really use this card to your advantage, though. If you're in a stall deck particularly, or if you're in a deck that likes setting, or Ghost Tricks maybe, could use Needle Sealing. Next up, Statue of the Wicked. Normal trap. If this set card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, special summon 1 Wicked token. Fiend, Dark, level 4, 1000 attack, 1000 defense. Can you not activate this card? I guess this is a trap that you can only ever set, and you can never activate it naturally. Needle Sealing has only gotten better over time since its effect has been easier to pull off in recent years. I agree. It also sees current play as copies 4 through 6 of Torrential Tribute. That is crazy. So you're running Evenly Matched, you're running Torrential Tribute, and then you're running Needle Sealing on top of it? Wow. Artifact decks have the same mechanic, and it's not good. I guess, in context, if you had like Statue of the Wicked and Mirage of Nightmare and Emergency Provisions, it wouldn't be too bad. But it's very underwhelming. When we do get an actual trap monster, when we get Embodiment of Afavis, just play that card, because it's not great. Cool artwork, though. It was also cool in the anime when Crowler had to set and then got monsters on the field and summoned the Ancient Gear Golem. Not good, but a cool moment. Next up, Dark Coffin. Normal trap. When this face-down card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, your opponent selects and executes one of the following effects. I'm not sure I've ever seen the word execute on a card before. Discard 1 random card in their hand, or select 1 monster on their side of the field and destroy it. So in general, it's not good to give your opponent a choice. This card is hard to use. But that upside of discarding a random card from their hand is okay. There is a much, much better proactive option. So I'm just going to put it in bad for now. They're likely going to pick the discard. I don't know about that. It depends on what deck they're playing. Sometimes, like if you're playing Fire Kings, you want to destroy your own monster. Piercing damage on old cards. I think we might even have, we have Spear Soldier in this set, so we have one of those weird piercing damage cards. Very spicy. Got some killer cards coming up. I agree. Next up, Needle Wall. Continuous trap. Once per turn, during your standby phase, roll a 6-sided die. Treat your opponent's monster card zones as numbers 1 through 5, counting from your right, and destroy the monster that is in the same monster card zone as the result. If the result is 6, roll again. Pretty underwhelming. This is random removal. which is not reliable. So this card might need more problem solving text because this only works with main monster card zones. If you get the right result, yeah, the card's okay. I think the needle ceiling is much better than the needle wall. But look at the lore, Don Zalug. He's so calm under pressure. Wait a second, does he have his pistol on his side in this card's artwork? Like, is his pistol on his leg? If they control 5 monsters at all times, you're going to get a sweet +1 every turn. That is true. I think it's just going to be filler for now. Lore does matter, just not in the considerations for the tier list. It's very cool though. Next up, Trap Dust Shoot. Normal trap. Activate only when your opponent has 4 or more cards in their hand. Look at your opponent's hand, select 1 monster card in it, and return that target to the owner's deck. Ooh. Ooh. That is such a dirty effect. I don't know if it did come off the ban list now, if you would play it. I think it's a design mistake. This card is just so nasty. Like, you can't play it turn 1, but you can set it and then activate it right during your opponent's draw phase. Look at your opponent. Yeah, you can scan your opponent's hand for hand traps. It returns to the deck. I think that is extremely forward thinking, because if it discarded, then you might hit a Dark World. If it's sent to the graveyard, you might still get an effect. This pulls out their 1 key piece and their combo. It's pretty nasty, and I don't like Trap Dust Shoot. I don't like discard effects in general, but this one in particular is pretty dirty. I think, yeah, you might play it first. If it were off the ban list, it might be in your going first. Permanent side deck for going first. I think that's fair. The card was insane. And I think for a period of time, you could even take notes. Like, you got some paper, and you could write down the cards that were in your opponent's hand so that you would have a little bit of record on it. I don't think you can do that anymore, but rulings back then were weird. I think it becomes public knowledge, but maybe it doesn't anymore. Next up, Pyro Clock of Destiny. Normal trap. Move the turn count forward by 1 turn. The turn in which this card is activated continues as normal. That sounds like unnecessary text. This card has exactly 1 use, I think, and that is specifically with Final Countdown. I mean, if you have no ban list, yes, you can win with Final Countdown on the first turn. On Swords of Revealing Light, does it work that way? I guess it does. I guess it would skip 1 of the turns. Ooh, Future Fusion. I can see it. It works pretty well with Future Fusion, maybe, to get your monster actually out. But most of the benefit of Future Fusion was front-loaded when it was just mass Foolish Burial. Your opponent loses next turn, then Pyro Clock of Destiny is broken. Yeah. Golden Bucks. I'm guessing Ferris Treasure, not quite there yet. Next up, Reckless Greed. Normal trap. Draw 2 cards and skip your next 2 draw phases. Is this card a JoJo Part 3 reference? The Reckless Greed or the Pyro Clock of Destiny? I doubt in either case. So Reckless Greed, one of the non-intuitive things is that this is not cumulative. If you activate Reckless Greed and you activate 2 copies in the same turn, you don't skip 4 draw phases, you only skip 2 draw phases. Same thing if you have like Offerings to the Doomed, you could Reckless Greed and activate Offerings to the Doomed and still only skip your next two. It's really good, but it's on a trap card. It was definitely meta for some time. I don't know if you play it today, though. I think I've been looking at the Labyrinth cards. This is a normal trap, so it's now searchable and it's a little bit faster. I'm thinking you might be able to use this card today. Specifically in Labyrinths or some really strong trap-heavy decks. And there's not a ton of those out there. I can see it being just meta at one point, but if you're being generous, it might be worth considering. The card's good, though. I like Reckless Greed. I don't think it's healthy for the game, but I think it's very interesting design. Looks like the same card art as Trap Dust Chute. I agree, but I think Cliff the Trap Remover is falling down the Trap Dust Chute for some irony. Paleo loves this. Next up, Pharaoh's Treasure, which is not quite Goldsark. Shuffle this card face up into your deck. Great start. If you draw this face up card that was added to your deck by this effect, send it to the graveyard, then target one card in your graveyard, except this card, add that target to your hand. Wow. That is a ridiculous hoop to go through. This card is a -2, I think? It's because you have to activate it. It shuffles itself back into the deck, so that's -1. And then you have to draw it, which means that you're having a dead draw, making it a -2, but then it retrieves the card from the graveyard, so I guess it's only a -1 at that point. Spyro would like to know your location because of the face-up shuffle. Interesting. Yeah, I think this card doesn't work the way that you think it does, unless you have like a simulator or something that actually works on randomizing. I think this card just enables cheating more than anything. I don't see it being useful. Plus, we have similar, much faster cards like Monster Reincarnation. We have Dark Factory of Mass Production, Magician of Faith, Fairy of the Spring. I know these are more specific, but there's a lot of different options that will come into the game later. Ooh, is it even a design mistake because it enables cheating? That's a good question. I can see that. I can see that. This card works really well in simulators, but not elsewhere. Next up, Master Kianshi. Earth attribute, level 4. Zombie. A wandering Kianshi, searching for a strong rival to defeat. They say he was known as a master of all martial arts. 1750 attack, 1000 defense. So I think this is new strongest zombie. I don't know why it's translated to Kianshi, because I think this card is a Jiangshi, like a Chinese vampire that hop around because they don't have knees. Anyway, that's there's a Ghost Trick card, Ghost Trick Jiangshi, and it's also got the seal on its forehead. I think it's just weird double translation. Does he have a previous card? Ooh, that'd be interesting. I don't think so. I'm going to say it's just bad. I mean, it's the strongest level 4 zombie we have now. Far-fetched, but perhaps it's a pun to do with the Banshee. That's pretty out there. Maybe if it were screaming. Next up, Kaboozles. But I think this is actually Kabazools? Really weird name. So the Japanese name for this is like Hippo Dinosaur of the Great Sneeze, which is much better, but we only got part of that. Water attribute, level 4, Dinosaur, a huge monster in the shape of a hippopotamus. The sneezing from his gigantic body is so fierce that people mistake it for a hurricane. 1700 attack, 1500 defense, and you played it in Dino Rabbit. Eventually we get Sabersaurus, which is better, and then we get that water attribute dinosaur with 2000 attack, which is even better than Sabersaurus, but you still played it in Dino Rabbit because you can only run 3 copies of Sabersaurus, and you could run multiple rabbits at that point. Megalo Smasher. Yeah, that's the water dinosaur. I like meta at one point because I like to reflect back on the highest level of success. I think it's the best way, and it makes the cards look as good as they can. Giant Rex 2, I think it is a great beatstick. Interesting. Mokugen. Mokugen? Next up, Enpachi. Earth attribute, level 4, Machine. Yes, totally not a plant at this point. A log that attacks lost travelers in the forest. Originally a big tree, it was cut down and possessed by a wicked spirit. 1600 attack, 1900 defense. Not bad stats, but I think it's pretty filler. It's cool though, we'll get Blazing Enpachi and then we'll get Woodborg Enpachi. So as far as lore goes, this is a pretty decent card. It's all about the lore. We're gonna need a lore tier list one day. Next up, Dark Geroid. Dark attribute, level 4, Fiend, effect. When this card is summoned, target one face-up monster on the field. It loses 800 attack. So this effect is mandatory. So if Dark Geroid's the only monster on the field, it goes to 400 attack. Its starting attack is 1200 and it has 1500 defense points. That is so awkward. 1200 attack, 1500 defense. This is an average Viacroid card. You can special summon it off of Mixeroid and search it with Dragonroid. Yeah, this is actually the first Roid card released into the game. There's a lot of Roid cards that say machine type Roid, and this is the reason. I think like Supercharge might say machine type Roid. It's funny that this card is so forward thinking because it works if it's flip summoned, if it's normal summoned, if it's special summoned. It's like Armageddon Knight. It's not a great effect, but if you're getting it as a stepping stone monster, it's not bad. It has seen competitive success, which I think is really interesting. One of the cool things that you can do is you can either get over something or you could intentionally shrink itself and make it for a crush card target. And sometimes that's useful. The Roid lore. I don't know if Roids have much lore. Next up, Newdoria. Dark attribute, level 4, Fiend, effect. When this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, target one monster on the field, destroy that target. 1200 attack, 800 defense. So it targets, it destroys, but it's really solid for the time. This is 1-for-1 removal. I think Grave Squirmer is a little bit worse than this card, but this card has seen some degree of meta success. It's one of the things that you could float a tomato into a New Doria and then take out one of your opponent's monsters. It's a pretty good target for that. And yes, it does look like the Batman Who Laughs. I think Axe Raider actually did it first, and I pointed out that Axe Raider looks like the Batman Who Laughs, but maybe the resemblance is stronger on this one. Man-Eater Bug, but better. I don't know if I'd go that far. It's definitely good. I don't know. I think Man-Eater Bug selects, not targets, which might be a benefit. That might be apocryphal, though. Next up, cover card. Hellpomer. So this is like Hero Poema. It's got more text, like redundant text in the Japanese version, but really cool artwork. One of my favorite artworks in the entire game. And it's Dark Attribute, level 5, Fiend effect. Cannot be special summoned from the graveyard, but can be special summoned from like the hand or the Banner Zone, which is okay. At the end of your opponent's battle phase, if this card is in the graveyard because it was destroyed by battle, make your opponent discard one random card. This card must be in the graveyard to activate and resolve this effect. 2000 attack, 1400 defense. I've seen it in a meta deck list at least once, which is crazy. This is recurring card advantage. No, it is not recurring card advantage. It only works once. But it is a discard card, and it saw a little bit of competitive success. I'm not sure, but like the fact that it can't be special summoned from graveyard might be a secret benefit, because then your opponent can't Monster Reborn it. Of course, then the effect would probably go off because that's spell speed 2. Because that would be a spell speed 1, and they'd have to wait for their second main phase. Never mind, ignore that. This card saw at least a little bit of success. I have seen it in a meta deck just to pick through people's hands. Very interesting. Speaking of which, Gravekeeper's Spy. Dark Attribute, level 4, Spellcaster, Flip effect, Flip. Special summon one Gravekeeper's monster with 1500 or less attack from your deck. 1200 attack, 2000 defense. That doesn't say other than Gravekeeper's Spy. So you could special summon another spy with it, and that's exactly what people did. Gravekeeper's Spy was an engine, a self-contained engine. Like you would special summon spy into spy into spy. It's real good. Sometimes you'd see Gravekeeper's Guard in addition. We'll talk about archetypes at some point, but this card's self-contained really good. Gets even better when we get Recruiter. I just now noticed 1500 or less attack. I think that's every Gravekeeper except for Chief at this point. I guess it even floats into Gravekeeper's Curse, which is Dark Attribute, level 3, Spellcaster, effect. When this card is summoned, inflict 500 points of damage to your opponent. Another forward-thinking effect anytime it's summoned. 800 attack, 800 defense. How can you go spy into spy into spy if the special summon is face up? Oh, does it have to be face up? I guess you can't go spy into spy into spy. I wonder if the card has had errata. Weird looking that up. It's that big of a mistake. I guess you can't special summon and face down defense position. I have no idea why I thought that then. I'm just wrong. I'm just wrong. I feel like there's a gimmick with it in order to loop it. I think so too. I think Gravekeeper's Curse and like Ultimate Offering maybe, and then there's actually a pretty decent burn card, Gravekeeper's Cannon Holder, in this set. Gravekeepers were the first playable archetype, I agree, and are honestly great in GOAT format. Necro Valley is even then really strong and makes all of them into solid beaters. Oh yeah, 500 attack, 500 defense, very strong. This has to be loopable. I think it is. I'm putting it in gimmick. So, Satellar Knight Alsham sort of does the same thing, but is a little bit more efficient. Alsham does 1,000 points of damage, and Alsham is definitely involved in some loops. It's crazy that this isn't only restricted to normal summons, because you can special summon it. Next up, Gravekeeper's Guard. Dark Attribute, level 4, Spellcaster, Effect, Flip. Target one monster your opponent controls, return that target to the hand. 1,000 attack, 1,900 defense. That's actually pretty good defense points for the monster. I'm actually going to put these higher because Spy was a staple. I guess Moisture Creature goes much lower by comparison. We'll order within tiers later maybe. But they were playing a Gravekeeper's Guard. It's a compulsory escape device. Yeah. It's a real good card. Just a lot of defense points and get rid of your opponent's cards. Temporarily. It works really well in tribute formats, and I think even in Monarch formats, it was still seeing play. Or maybe because of Monarch formats. Next up, Gravekeeper's Spear Soldier. Dark Attribute, level 4, Spellcaster, Effect. If this card attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing battle damage to your opponent. Oh, I thought that they hadn't had the problem-solving card text on this one. Disappointed that you're not going to get to hear the super wordy piercing damage text. 1,500 attack, 1,000 defense. I lied. I'm going to put it acceptable in Archetype. Because I think it's okay. The fact that Spy can float into it makes it a lot more attractive. It's a tool in your toolbox, but not necessarily the one that you use all the time. Good to have maybe 1 or 2 copies in your deck. Next up, Gravekeeper's Vassal. Dark Attribute, level 3, Spellcaster, Effect. Any battle damage this card inflicts to your opponent is treated as effect damage instead. 700 attack, 500 defense. I don't understand this card. I don't think it's broken. I don't think it's confusing. I know this card was used in Duel Links because you'd get like bonus rewards for beating your opponent in one turn with effect damage. That you'd boost this card up and it would help you grind. I don't know. If the effect spread to all the Gravekeepers, I don't think it would be good. I just don't see the use of... I guess the only use I can think about is if your opponent has Wabaku up. But I don't see you playing this card. I think it's just bad. Most problematic card art in the set. Oh. He's just mischievous, but I can see that. Magic Cylinder, maybe. Next up, Gravekeeper's Watcher. Dark Attribute, level 4, Spellcaster, effect. During either player's turn, when your opponent activates a spell or trap or monster effect that could make them discard when it resolves. So wordy. You can send this card from your hand to the graveyard, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. 1,000 attack, 1,000 defense. This card is a hand trap. Like a 2003 hand trap. I know we've seen Karibo, but this one is a decent hand trap. Because, yeah, it's a hand trap. I think the only application that I can see for this card is against Dark Worlds, because you could stop them from activating decent cards. I don't know if this card ever saw any meta success. I don't know if we even put it super worth considering today, because it is a hand trap. Danger. Oh yeah. This would get around dangers. I think this is one of those cards that maybe you keep in the back of your mind. I don't know. It's a weird hand trap. There's actually another weird hand trap in this set too, but it's Gravekeeper's exclusive. Ah, okay. So one of the applications for Vassal would be with Dark Room of Nightmare. I guess that'd be okay. Ooh, this card stops card destruction. That is pretty good. I guess it stops Morphing Jar and that could make them discard when it resolves. Interesting. I guess that means even modal cards that have the option that would make them discard. Side deck card. Yeah, I definitely agree. Don't main deck this card. But worth considering doesn't mean that it's necessarily playable. It's one of those cards that might come up. A staple in my Exodia deck. I think Backup Soldier is much better for that. But I might be wrong. Weird. Very weird card to include in the set. I'm guessing it's like protecting you from discard effects? I don't know. Next up, Gravekeeper's Chief. Dark Attribute, level 5, Spellcaster, effect. You can only control one face-up Gravekeeper's Chief. Your graveyard is unaffected by Necro Valley. When this card is tribute summoned, you can target one Gravekeeper's monster in your graveyard, special summon that target. It's very important that it tells you beforehand that your graveyard's no longer affected by Necro Valley, otherwise this card would be silly. 1900 attack, 1200 defense. So you bring it out, and then it instantly resurrects one of your Gravekeepers, so you don't go -1. Under Necro Valley, it's got 2500 attack. Just a +1 tribute summon? I don't know. It's not a +1. It's like a neutral card advantage tribute summon, which you don't see very often. I think it's acceptable in Archetype. Really lowers the ceiling into this grindy, wide black thing. What? I think it's a pretty good card. I like how it turns off Necro Valley for you. Although Necro Valley in itself is confusing. And we'll get there when we get there. Next up, Gravekeeper's Cannon Holder. Dark Attribute, level 4, Spellcaster, effect. You contribute one Gravekeeper's monster, except Gravekeeper's Cannon Holder. Inflict 700 damage to your opponent. 1400 attack, 1200 defense. I think this might... So this card is a tribute to burn, and most of the time, unless they have pretty big restrictions, tribute to burn cards end up in Gimmick. This one might be there too, especially if you're using Gravekeeper's curse, because you could curse and then tribute, and then curse and then tribute, and you'd only have to do that 7 times, I think, because it does 1200 each time. So if you could summon curse 7 times while you have Gravekeeper's Cannon Holder on the field, you could OTK. But chip damage or just finishing off your opponent, this card sort of functions like an early Darkstrike fighter in that way. I think it might be Gimmick, it might be Archetype, acceptable in an Archetype. Next up, Gravekeeper's Assailant. Dark Attribute, level 4. Spellcaster, effect. When this card declares an attack while Necro Valley is on the field, you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls. Change that target's battle position. 1500 attack, 1500 defense. Select the strongest Gravekeeper so far. I think it's okay. It's not a great payoff, but it's not bad either. Plus, you can float into this with Mystic Tomato, which is pretty good. It's like the strongest Gravekeeper without tributing. Next up, Man with Wajat, which is probably Man with Ujat. But we're going with childhood pronunciation, so a Man with Wajat. Dark Attribute, level 4, Spellcaster, effect. When you normal summon this card, and during each of your standby phases, select one set card on your opponent's side of the field, pick it up, and look at it. Then return it to its original position. 1600 attack, 1600 defense. Very underwhelming. I think this is a filler effect. Theoretically, this is information, and you'd gain a little bit of information each time, but you're probably better off with like Breaker the Magical Warrior. Similar stat line, but more proactive in what it can do. When we get Breaker. Flip up their Maneater bug. It only works on face up, so you can't flip their Maneater bug with the Assailant. It's Patroid. There's also what is the name of it? One of the tournament cards, Helping Robo for not Helping Robo for combat. Patrol Robo. Patrol Robo does the same thing too. And Patrol Robo's even in the game already. Next up, Mystical Knight of Jackal. Light Attribute, level 7, Beast Warrior, effect. When this card destroys one monster in your opponent's side of the field and sends it to your opponent's graveyard as a result of battle, you can then return the card to the top of your opponent's deck. 2700 attack, 1200 defense. It's okay. I mean, it's very underwhelming for what it does. Like, we'll get Mystic Swordsman level 2 and Mystic Swordsman level 4 and Mystic Swordsman level 6, and they all sort of do this effect. It's very underwhelming on a 2 tribute monster. Is it just me, or does Yu-Gi-Oh have a lot of ancient Egyptian themed garbage for a game so heavily based on that theme? Well, this set in particular, I'd say it's like a little bit garbage, but mostly we have cards that are pretty good. If it's ever good, it's so good, but it's usually terrible. Yep. Next up, a Cat of Ill Omen. Dark Attribute, level 2. Beast, flip effect monster. Flip, choose one trap from your deck and place it on top of your deck. Or, if Necro Valley is on the field, you can add that trap to your hand instead. 500 attack, 300 defense. So this is really strong as far as searchers. That's any trap in the game. That's really, really strong. It's just super slow. This card did see success, like find your Gravity Bind, or find your Ring of Destruction, or find your Magic Cylinder, or find your Torrential Tribute. It's just really slow. Would it turn off recruiters since you could remove them from the graveyard in the chain? I don't know if this would stop Tomato. Yeah, every single trap card in the tips section has a Cat of Ill Omen as the way to search it. It's universal. Does it reveal the trap card? I don't think it does. I think this is one of those new information ruling cards where it just sort of does and you take your opponent's word for it. Very interesting though. Next up, Yomi Ship. Water attribute, level 3, Aqua, effect. If this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, destroy the monster that destroyed this card. 800 attack, 1400 defense. There are a lot of Aqua monsters in this set. We have Jowls of the Dark Demise, Yomi Ship, Mucus Yoke, Servant of Catabolism, and they're all okay. It has to reveal, or else you could just add the card you want. That makes sense. It's a new ship. This card is, I think this card is just Grave Squirmer before Grave Squirmer. Level 3, not bad. Next up, Winged Sage Falcos. Wind attribute, level 4, Winged Beast, effect. When this card destroys an opponent's face-up attack position monster by battle and sends it to their graveyard, you can place that monster on top of their deck. 1700 attack, 1200 defense. So, Mystical Knight of Jackal does this, sort of, but this one's a little bit harder to use. This card's okay, but the Jackal's not, and the difference is, well, 1000 attack points, but 2 tributes cheaper. I'm not sure if it's a replacement effect, though. I'm not sure if it still goes to the graveyard. More useful effect because it blocks a draw. Yeah, discount Yada. I think discount Mystic Swordsman. I think it's okay. If it turns off searchers or recruiters, it's great. Otherwise, it's only okay. I think the way it's worded, it's not a replacement effect, so they'd still hit the graveyard. Next up, an Owl of Luck. Wind attribute, level 2, Winged Beast, flip effect, flip. Select one field spell from your deck and place it on top of your deck. If Necro Valley is on your field, you can add the selected field spell to your hand instead. That's a head scratcher. 300 attack, 500 defense. I think those are the reverse of a Cat of Ill Omen, so you have the opposites. Anyway, why is this searching for a field spell that works with Necro Valley? If you already have Necro Valley out on the field, do you need another field spell? It just feels so awkward. Not to mention, I guess minor spoiler alert, we have Terraforming right here in the same set. I think this card is so underwhelming. Maybe Terraforming should just come out later in the game, but it's just bad. It's so that you can change from Necro Valley to Mystic Mine, of course. I think the card is redundant and not particularly useful. It's weird deck thinning. It gives you a backup Necro Valley? In case your first one doesn't work or gets blown up, I don't know. Next up, Charm of Shabti. Hey, is this an Ushabti? Like the little funeral urns that go with, I think, cremated mummies go on them now that I think of it. Not canopic jars, but I think this is based on Ushabti, based on the name. Earth attribute, level 1, rock effect. During either player's turn, you can discard this card. Until the end phase, Gravekeeper's monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle. 100 attack, 100 defense. It's like protection from beyond the grave. I'm going to say it's okay. It's like very, very mediocre. You're probably better off running Wabaku, but I'm going to actually change my mind. It's not even good in Archetype. It's not playable outside of Archetype, and then in Archetype you're better with Wabaku. Is it a quick effect? I think it's a quick effect, because it says during either player's turn. Can it be searched in their own archetype? You can search it with Gallant Granite, I know that. But I don't think there's a specific card to search for it. If you could, then it might be a little bit better than Wabaku. A little bit. Next up, another jar. Cobra Jar. Earth attribute, level 2. Reptile, flip effect. Flip. Special summon 1 poisonous snake token. Reptile type, Earth, 3 stars. Attack 1200, defense 1200. The token's stronger than the actual jar. When the poisonous snake token is destroyed as a result of battle, inflict 500 points of damage to your opponent's life points. 600 attack, 300 defense. Hey, it summons a token. Hey, it's a really slow way of summoning a token. I think I'm just going to keep it in filler. It's not a bad effect. It's not a great effect. Can it be used for link summoning? To my knowledge, I don't know of a good way of setting and then flipping monsters for play extension and link summoning. I know we have Book of Taiyu, but a good way to do it. I understand. I guess jars don't usually have much attack or much going in the way of attacking. I got it. The monster is the actual jar, not the snake coming out of the jar. But what are the eyes in the jar? Is there a second cobra hiding in the jar? Multiple cobras? Multi-cobra jar. We'll make a retrain. Multi-cobra jar. If this card was like Scapegoat, it'd be real good, but... Next up, Spirit Reaper. Dark attribute, level 3. Zombie effect. Cannot be destroyed by battle. After resolving a card effect that targets this face-up card, destroy this card. When this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent by a direct attack, discard 1 random card from their hand. 300 attack, 200 defense. And look, it's got the purple robes. It sort of looks like Skull Servant. It's got the same attack points as Skull Servant. Is this a Skull Servant retrain? Yeah, this card is definitely format defining. This card was at 1 for a very long time, and you put it in every single deck. It's really strong that you get that opportunistic hand disruption. I mean, Don Zalug is right here. It's better than Don Zalug. It's weird that it blows itself up if it's targeted, but that doesn't come up that often. I like how it gives your opponent an out as far as being able to disrupt it. It's a more fair version of Marshmallow in that respect. Because Marshmallow also has a beneficial effect, but doesn't have that targeting immunity. Or targeting weakness. Next up, Nightmare Horse. Really cool artwork, by the way. I agree, real cool artwork. Dark Attribute, level 2, Zombie, effect. This card can attack your opponent's life points directly, even if there is a monster on your opponent's side of the field. There's a lot of redundant card text in here. 500 attack, 400 defense. So, I don't know. We got Servant of Catabolism. This is worse than both of those cards, but it's fusion material. I think it's just going to go next to them. A little bit lower. It is actually material for the Reaper on the Nightmare. Even better card artwork, in my opinion. This is beautiful. I just love the horse. It's like blue flame. It's excellent. Color theory, you got a purple card, then you got purple robes, and the red in the background, and the blue on the horse, and it all comes together. Anyway, what does it do? Reaper on the Nightmare, Dark Attribute, level 5, Zombie Fusion effect. Materials are Spirit Reaper and Nightmare Horse. Makes sense. This card is not destroyed as a result of battle. Destroy this card when it is targeted by the effect of a spell, trap, or effect monster. Ooh, it's inherited that effect. This card can attack your opponent's life points directly, even if there is a monster on your opponent's side of the field. It inherited that effect too, apparently. If this card successfully attacks your opponent's life points directly, your opponent discards one card randomly from his or her hand. 800 attack, 600 defense. So the attack points are the sum of the two materials attack points, same with the defense, and it gains both of their effects. This is a beautiful fusion monster from a design perspective. It's level 5, combination of their two levels. I think this card is incredibly well designed, and this card is a target for instant fusion. Since it's level 5, it's a zombie. I don't know if that ever comes up for like vampire decks, which like level 5s and zombies, but this card's really good. I think you might consider it today, but I'd also accept if it were just meta at one point. This card is amazing with Metamorphosis, which is actually released in the same set somewhere. Right here. Here's Metamorphosis. Does it replace Humanoid Wormdrake as the best designed fusion monster? Instant fusion blocks attacks, though. It's not so much for the attack effect. Mostly it's the combination of level, attribute, and type that you're looking for as far as instant fusion. So I guess that is gimmick. I'm just going to keep it in meta at one point. It's always good to have more options for instant fusion / ready fusion. So many iconic cards. I agree. They are knocking it out of the park as far as their batting ratio on this set. I'm very impressed. Next up, Dark Designator to make me eat my words. Normal spell. Declare one monster card name. If the declared card is in your opponent's deck, add one of that card to your opponent's hand. Why would you want to do that? Like, I don't understand the purpose of this card. I can't think of a good reason. I think it's the Solemn guy. Oh, it's what is his name? What is his name? He's got it's Secretarian of Secrets. That's the name of the guy in the purple robes. Sectarian of Secrets, I think is his name. Okay, you could add their Garnet from their deck to their hand. There is one use for it. You could use Parasite Parasite with this card. Does that work? I don't remember if they have to draw it naturally for that one to go off. I can look it up though. You have to draw it naturally, so it does not support Parasite. There's a Quintillion Step FTK that uses this card to deck your opponent out. Okay. Mill support. Combos with card destruction. I think this card is just very bad. Add a card on the mirror plus exchange. Okay. But I don't know why you want to go -2. That's the other thing. It's adding it to the hand. It's not banishing it face down or anything. At the top of the deck, I guess it would be, but there's a specific card called Jade Insect Whistle that does work with Parasite specifically for that purpose. If you wanted to do that, but this card's just bad. Just really bad. Wait till we get to DD Designator. DD Designator is really good. Next up, Card Shuffle. Continue a spell. Pay 300 life points to use this card's effect. Shuffle either your or your opponent's deck. You can only use this effect during your turn, once per turn. Oh no, why is this once per turn? I know why this card is once per turn. It's because of Reversal Quiz. But I just don't understand the benefit of this. Like, maybe if your deck is face down with Archfiend's Oath and you have Convulsion of Nature up and you don't like that card and you want a different card, it's just not worth a card. It's so bad. Place Garnet at the top of the deck for essentially even card advantage, but also denying a Garnet. Oh, that would be better if Dark Designator worked that way. Okay, Dark Designator, and then Card Shuffle. That doesn't work though. That doesn't help you. Card's so bad. Like, most of the time when you're in your deck, anytime you're looking in your deck, it forces you to shuffle it anyway. Anyway, Reasoning. Normal spell. Your opponent declares a monster level from 1 to 12. Excavate cards from the top of your deck until you excavate a monster that can be normal summoned or set. Then, if that monster is the same level as the one declared by your opponent, send all excavated cards to the graveyard. If not, special summon the excavated monster. Also send the remaining cards to the graveyard. Card's amazing. Like, I think that this card has been meta the entire time that it's been out. I know people will disagree, but Reasoning has always been an amazing card that I don't think people quite realized until, Stratos and Destiny hero decks. Not the Diamond Dew Turbo. What was it called? Like Blade. Not Clown Blade. Anyway, the Stratos Turbo decks. Reasoning Gate is really cracked in the era. I agree. It's so good in Infernoid. Yep. Oh, it's not just meta at one point. It's definitely worth considering. There's a lot of things that you can do with Reasoning that make the card degenerate, like Magical Explosion. can work well off of reasoning. There's self-mill ideas that you can do. There's some FTKs that involve reasoning and DMOC. You can't do them anymore, but you used to be able to. Toon Cannon Soldier. There's a crazy amount of application for that. Card's amazing. I love running it in synchro decks especially, because your opponent's not going to know what level your monsters are, because synchro decks usually have a nice wide range of levels. But if you're going first turn activate reasoning, they have no information at that point. Next up, Dark Room of Nightmare. Continuous spell. Each time your opponent takes damage from a card effect, except Dark Room of Nightmare, inflict 300 points of damage to your opponent. So, in the anime, there's actually another card that does the same thing as Dark Room of Nightmare. So if you have the two of them activated at the same time, it's unlimited burn damage. But I guess you could use Gravekeeper's Vassal with this card. I can't think of a good use for it. Like, you very slightly extend your burn damage. This card has seen meta success, but I don't know. I'm just going to keep it here. Next up, Different Dimension Capsule. Normal spell, banish one card from your deck face down. I think that's the first time they've ever mentioned face down banish. After this card's activation, it remains on the field. Destroy this card during your second standby phase after activating this card. And if you do, add the banished card to your hand. So, one note is if they use Mystical Space Typhoon, you don't get that card. It just stays banished. This card is a worse version of Gold Sarcophagus, but Gold Sark isn't out, and Gold Sark's not going to be out for a long time. This card saw a little bit of meta experimentation, but not a great amount. Ooh, the clock. Pyro Clock of Destiny helps you out a little bit. I guess that's true. I don't think it's great, but it definitely saw some meta success. So. Is Pyro Clock of Destiny in the card's artwork even? I don't think so. Maybe it is. Maybe it's just a clock that resembles it. Target Power Bond. Okay, for this next one, let me see. Okay, so here is Necro Valley's original effect on screen. Just for reference. So Necro Valley has had, I think, 6 errata. Just the question of what does Necro Valley do is a head scratcher. Okay, so here is the Pharonic Guardian version of Necro Valley, and I'm not going to go through every errata, just the first one for reference, and then the most recent one. As long as this card remains face up on the field, all effects of magic, trap, and/or effect monster cards that involve graveyards are negated, and neither player can remove cards in their graveyards from play. In addition, increase the attack and defense of all monsters that include Gravekeepers in their card name by 500 points. It is very confusing what Necro Valley even hits. And it could be a design mistake. I understand what they're doing with it now. Now it makes sense because I'm going to pull it back up. For reference, For reference, here is the current Necro Valley. And it has the effect, Necro Valley, field spell. All Gravekeeper's monsters gain 500 attack and defense. Cards in the graveyard cannot be banished. Negate any card effect that would move a card in the graveyard to a different place. Negate any card effect that changes types or attributes in the graveyard. In my mind, that's still not a perfect version of Necro Valley, but it's a lot more reasonable. And this means that, like, you can run Necro Valley with Dark World monsters. I'm not sure you could with the Pharonic Guardian version. I'm not sure when Necro Valley and Dark Worlds work well together. And keep in mind, this isn't beige specifically. This is talking about like Huntsman, or not beige, gold, or silva, but brow, grin, khaki, the other Dark Worlds that don't special summon themselves. It is very cool that it counters zombies. I agree, Pre-Errata Necro Valley is even better because it is so confusing what it actually does. It just hits everything with Blanket. I can understand design mistake. I think that's fair. But as far as playability, Necro Valley is very playable today. It's a side deck card, but considering we have Gravekeeper's Commandant, it's a very searchable side deck card, especially with Terraforming in addition to Commandant. I think the card's great. I don't know when Gravekeeper Necro Valley Dark Worlds was a thing, or if it ever was, based on weird wording in errata, but one day I will figure out what Necro Valley does. Imagine how crazy it would be to be able to negate all effects that involve the graveyard with Metaverse. Even better, you could be using Demise of the Land and then surprise your opponent, because that'd be quick play. Negate any card that involves the graveyard. Theoretically negates Foolish Burial, Armageddon Knight, and everything else. Oh wow, that is a lot. Commandant is also searchable, so you can have 10 copies of Necro Valley. Ooh! Of course, we need 10 copies of Necro Valley in your deck. That does really help with consistency, though. Because when we get to Royal Tribute is a great payoff for Necro Valley. Not quite there yet, though. Next up, we have Buster Rancher. Equip spell. Only a monster with an attack of 1,000 points or less can be equipped with this card. During damage calculation, increase the attack of the equipped monster with this card by 2,500 points if the opponent's monster that battles it is in attack position and its attack is 2,500 points or more, or if the opponent's monster that battles it is in defense position and has a defense of 2,500 points or more. Big gun. It's the BFG 9000. I would agree with that. It is a real big gun. I think it's just filler, though. When we get to Ballista of Rampart Smashing, that card saw a little bit of success, but it reads so much better than it actually does. I think the card is completely irrelevant today because we have Moon Mirror Shield. Next up, Hieroglyph Lithograph. Say that one. Hieroglyph Lithograph. That one's hard to say. It's a stone tablet that has hieroglyphics on it. That's like what the name says. Normal spell, pay 1,000 life points. During the current duel, your hand size limit becomes 7. That wording is super awkward now that I read it. It's like, during the entire match, my hand size would go to 7? What were you expecting otherwise? Forever, my hand size goes to 7? I think this effect is just really, really underwhelming. I paid 1,000 life points for this. I guess it's better than Toon World, because your Toon World you pay 1,000 life points and then get nothing. There is a card that allows you to have infinite hand size. It's called Infinite Cards. We don't have it yet. I don't think Infinite Cards has been released yet. I hope not, because that would be really sad. Next up, Dark Snake Syndrome. So, I don't know about Dark Snake Syndrome. Continuous spell. During each of your standby phases, inflict damage to both players. The damage begins at 200 and is doubled during each of your following standby phases. So this card can single-handedly win you the game, but it takes a good amount of time to build up to it. I think Gimmick's safe. I think I might have seen it in a meta deck or two, just a stall deck though. I don't think this card is fun. I think this card is bad for the game. It's the scuffed version of a wave motion cannon. Oh, that's a great description. I don't have to discard, bro. I paid to stack that last week when we played, remember? If hieroglyph lithograph was just always. Burning Land. Oh yeah, you can combine it with Burning Land and Chain Energy, and isn't that an SCP? That's a good note to end the card on. Next up, Terraforming. Normal spell, add one field spell from your deck to your hand. I mean, one of the best search cards in the game, I'd say. I mean, limited to just field spells, but field spells are really good. I mean, Necro Valley's a field spell. Next up, Banner of Courage. Continuous spell. All monsters you control gain 200 attack during your battle phase only. It's just so underwhelming. Terraforming is really balanced around field spells being bad. Yeah, field spells are symmetric. Your opponent gets just as much benefit as you do. Terraforming is almost a design mistake, given that there are so many absolutely broken field spells. I don't know if that's Terraforming's fault, but it definitely happens. It's definitely a consequence of larger card pool over time. Next up, Metamorphosis. Normal spell, tribute one monster, special summon one fusion monster from your fusion deck with the same level as the tributed monster. So this card needs an errata because it's now the extra deck, but Metamorphosis is great. This card is a lot of fun, shouldn't be in the main game, but if you're playing kitchen table, this card is super fun. Neo Bubble Man is sad. I think some of the other next monsters, like Marine Dolphin, might need Metamorphosis too. It's definitely a design mistake, but like, it's very fun. It's a very fun card. It's half the appeal of why people love Goat. But Cyberstein. Oh, I like Cyberstein. Hello, Rain McKnight. Next up, Royal Tribute. If you control Necro Valley, both players discard their hands to the graveyard. Oh, I'm sorry. Both players discard any monsters in their hands. Where did I get the graveyard? So Royal Tribute. I mean, it's not healthy for the game, but as far as playability, Royal Tribute is really strong. You go first, you take out your opponent's hand, there goes their hand traps. Their graveyard's already under Necro Valley, so what else are they going to do? Hand destruction, but worse. I don't know if I agree with that. Decks that are playing Royal Tribute are like Fabled, Danger, and Dark World that are going to be benefiting off of that. Under some interpretations, Necro Valley itself could negate discards. Yeah, Necro Valley very much in need of that problem-solving card text. More like hand destruction, but better. How would you design a balanced Metamorphosis retrain? Oh man, that would be really, really hard. Because there is just so much that could go wrong. Like, maybe you could say your opponent takes no damage. Maybe it self-destructs. But then you're just going to get Last Warrior from Another Planet out. I think the card is just way design limiting. Maybe Instant Fusion is a better Metamorphosis, but it negated its effect and destroyed at the end of the turn. I don't know. I don't think we should redesign Metamorphosis. I think it's a real fun card that shouldn't be in the game, which is a little sad to say. Next up, Reversal Quiz. This card's degenerate. Just getting that out of the way. Send all cards, normal spell, send all cards in your hand and on your side of the field to the graveyard. Call the type of card, spell, trap, or monster on the top of the deck. If you call it right, exchange your current life points with your opponent's current ones. This is the reason why card shuffle is a once per turn, because inspection used to be the culprit, that you would just pay life points over and over and over again with inspection, and then swap them with your opponent, and have Fuma Shuriken or Black Pendant set, so when it destroyed all the cards on your side of the field, it would send that to the graveyard, and then they'd take the effect damage. Card's not good. There is nothing good that comes out of Reversal Quiz. Now you have like Gale Dogra is one of the best ways to pay life points, but there are other ways. Solemn Judgment is your problem now. I feel Reversal Quiz should be in the meta at one point. The Reversal Quiz FTK is one of the best decks in GOAT. I agree. I think it's just a gimmick. I don't think it's healthy for the game. I guess at some point I bet I need to better define what a gimmick is, because it's sort of a cop-out to put it in that category. Anyway, next one, Coffin Cellar. Continuous trap. Each time a monster is sent to your opponent's graveyard, inflict 300 points of damage to your opponent. It's just underwhelming. At least it's not like Fatal Abacus, where it hits both of you. At least it's just your opponent. But it's very marginal burn damage. Next up, Curse of Aging. Normal trap. Discard one card from your hand. Decrease the attack and defense of all monsters on your opponent's side of the field by 500 points until the end of the turn this card is activated. It's sort of like Skull Dice, but more consistent, but with a lower ceiling, which I don't think makes it particularly good. This is followed by Barrel Behind the Door. Counter trap. Activate only when a card's effect that would inflict damage to you is activated. Your opponent takes the damage instead. So this is a really good anti-burn card. I like the OCG artwork with the gun. I'm wondering, is that one of Donza Luke's? It's a really cool trap card. I've definitely seen it in a lot of side decks, but I don't know if you would use it against burn decks now. It's real fun for your opponent to go off with Chain Strike, and then you just give it all back to them. Worst version of Burden the Mighty. I can agree with that with Curse of Aging. Next up, Raigeki Break. Normal trap, discard one card, then target one card on the field. Destroy it. Yeah, very simple effect, so a lot of meta success. There are definitely better options now, but it is one of the ones that you could use. This is followed by Narrow Pass, which I think looks like a broken card. Maybe it's just me. Also, is that Elvis in the top right corner hiding? Is Raigeki Break worth considering today? And with the new Labyrinth cards coming out, yeah, I think generously you'd say that Raigeki Break might be worth considering today. But back to Narrow Pass. Do we know these monsters? I don't think so, but they look familiar, or at least some of them do. I'm pretty sure that's Elvis. Continuous Trap. This card can only be activated when both players have two monsters or less on their respective sides of the field. Both players can only normal summon up to 2 additional monsters on their sides of the field. You think it's going to be Kaiser Coliseum, but it's just very bad. It's super slow, doesn't do very much. That's true. I can see Raigeki Break going back down. Next up, Disturbance Strategy. Normal trap, your opponent shuffles their entire hand into the deck, then draws the same number of cards. When is this useful? I'll tell you when. The only time when you're going to be using Disturbance Strategy is when you're playing a degenerate deck with Protector of the Sanctuary to prevent your opponent from drawing the cards. This card's only uses hand loops. Not very productive. Next up, Trap of Board Eraser. Counter trap. You can only activate this card when an effect that inflicts damage to your life points is activated, except battle damage. What kind of a card effect inflicts battle damage? Negate the effect damage you receive, and your opponent then selects one card from his or her hand and discards it. Huh. This card's actually real strong for the time. I'm not sure if I've ever seen Trap of Board Eraser, but this is a +1 anti-burn card, which is pretty good. Yeah, you can stop Magic Cylinder, you can stop Ukazi, you can stop Chain Strike. This card's pretty good. I wonder why I haven't seen it see play. Next up, Rite of Spirit. Normal trap. Target one Gravekeeper's monster in your graveyard. Special summon that target. And then the very, very important text. This card's activation and effect are unaffected by Necro Valley. Otherwise, this would be, not good. I think it's fine in Archetype. I think it's totally playable. Kind of slow and conditional. I agree with Trap of Board Eraser. It's alright. This card has been on my mind for 20 years or close to it. Because I got this when I was a kid, and it always has sounded good. Non-aggression area, normal trap. You can only activate this card during your standby phase. Discard one card from your hand. Your opponent cannot normal summon /set and or special summon during his or her next turn. I don't know where to put this. I think it might have a tiny bit of potential in certain decks, but currently the best thing you can do with it is somehow special summon a Bubble Man from your hand and then activate Bubble Illusion during your own standby phase. It sounds insane, but it's really tricky. But then you're running Bubble Illusion and Bubble Man and a way to special summon Bubble Man during your standby phase, and then your payoff is okay? It's way too slow. I have seen people talk about it. It just reads so much better than it does. One day, this card might be useful. But till then, it's just always going to be in the back of my mind. There will eventually be a meta where this is insane. I agree. Maybe if there's a new master role you can't special summon from the extra deck during the first turn in the game, then it wouldn't be that bad. Or maybe it would still be bad, but it'd be better. Next up, D-Tribe. Normal trap. All monsters on your side of the field are treated as dragon types until the end phase of this turn. Why would you want that? That might even be a negative. Like, what if your opponent had a dragon capture jar? I just don't understand. There would need to be some trap support that allows traps to generically be played from your hand. I think some of the labyrinth cards are sort of getting there, but I don't think they're quite there yet. We do really need a good way to do it during the standby phase, and that's the biggest call. Buster Blader DIY DNA surgery. But DNA surgery is okay. I don't think D-Tribe is okay. Next up, Visor Shock. Dark Attribute, level 5, Fiend effect. If this card is summoned, return all set cards in the field to the hand. Hey, that's not bad. Oh wait, it's on a level 5. But wait a second. If this card is summoned, so that includes special summon. So you could float into this with a tomato. Interesting. Interesting. That's not bad, yeah. I don't know if I've ever seen this card see play, but it's definitely not bad. Those really low stats sort of help it out. Next up, question. Question. What does this card do? Normal spell. When activating this card, your opponent cannot check cards in the graveyard. Yay. Your opponent calls the name of the first monster found at the bottom of the graveyard. If he or she calls it right, that monster is removed from play. If he or she calls it wrong, that monster is special summoned to your side of the field. Who is that guy? That's the guy from Reversal Quiz. Would you believe that there's at least a deck or two called the Question that plays Question? It's in one of the competitive overviews. I found this deck, and it actually plays Question, and that's so funny to me. It is a very fun version of Monster Reborn that's way more fair. I like it a lot. And like, if you have DD Scout Plane as the first monster in your graveyard, then it's okay if they banish it. It's cool because it like tests your opponent's not concentration, but their observation and memory. I think it's a cool design. Next up, Rope of Life. Normal trap. When a monster is destroyed by battle and sent to your graveyard, discard your entire hand, minimum 1 card, then target one of those monsters, special summon it, and if you do, it gains 800 attack. I'm just gonna say bad. Generously, you'd say filler outclassed. It's your whole hand for one monster. Only works by battle. I think that's very underwhelming. Dark Worlds like this. I'm not sure. There's a comma and then a then. So I'm not sure if this is a condition, then a cost, then an effect, or if this is a condition and then an effect. This card may or may not trigger Dark Worlds. But I still think it's pretty underwhelming. Next up, Nightmare Wheel. Continuous trap. Activate this card by targeting one monster your opponent controls. It cannot attack or change its battle position. When it leaves the field, destroy this card. During each of your standby phases, inflict 500 damage to your opponent. That monster must be on the field to activate and resolve this effect. Again, the OCG artwork, a little bit scarier. It's got a barbarian instead of this green goblin guy. Yeah, this card has seen meta success. I think you're way better off with Fiendish Chain now, but it's still a pretty good card. At least it's seen meta success, and I think that's a pretty high watermark to have. Last card in the set, Secret Rare, Lava Golem. It's got 8 stars, Fiend, effect monster, cannot be normal summoned or set, must first be special summoned from your hand to your opponent's side of the field by attributing 2 monsters they control. You cannot normal summon or set the turn you special summon this card. Once per turn, during your standby phase, take 1,000 damage. Now remember, it's going to your opponent's side of the field, so they'll be taking the damage. 3,000 attack, 2,500 defense. Yeah, I'd say that this is the first kaiju. It's definitely been meta at one point, and a lot of points actually. I think Volcanic Queen sorta supplanted it, but now all the kaijus really have. Sort of. I mean, there are situations where your opponent has exactly 2 monsters, so you can't do Winged Dragon of Raw Sphere form, and you could still use Lava Golem. It's not like it's completely useless. Really? Even worth considering today? Okay. I think that's fair. I think you only get 3 Winged Dragon Raw Sphere form, so maybe you think about running a Lava Golem in addition. That's the end of the set. Do we have time for the other thing? Okay, we have 15 minutes of time for the other thing. Okay. Ooh, you can use multiple Lava Golems in the same turn. That is really good. Plus you can use Owner's Seal with it. There's a lot of good opportunity with Lava Golem. So one of the things I want to do as far as this is I want to have some consideration for cards in their greater archetype. So as a bonus thing, this is just the pilot for it. I wanted to talk about how archetypes are functioning at this point as a whole. So I went ahead and gathered everything which is vaguely an archetype at this point. So we got Blue Eyes, which is just Blue Eyes at this point, so it's a solitary card. Same thing with Dark Magician. Eventually they'll get more support. Harpies are sort of fleshed out. Summon Skull is not just Summon Skull, it's actually Archfiends in general, because Summon Skull is an Archfiend. Lava Golem, this is Swamp Battle Guard, combines with Lava Battle Guard. Technically, an archetype is cards that reference each other. I don't know about the tiers yet. That's the thing that has been on my mind for a long time. I guess we'd put meta up top. Probably functional below that. Or maybe we put rogue and then functional. Probably want a tier for not an archetype yet, which would include things like that and that at this point. I mean, Blue Eyes won a Worlds once. Yeah, but this is in the in the idea that it's 2003. Pharonic Guardian just came out. Like Gravekeepers, definitely meta at this point. Penguins are not an archetype yet. Dark Lords are not an archetype. Is Exodia its own archetype? I guess at some point. It is so hard considering which ones are actually an archetype. I guess we need like undersupported. Probably want to recolor them. I think the main thing I want to do is make sure that when I have reference, because there are some cards, some decks, some archetypes that don't work well together in their own deck, but can be taken apart for bits and pieces or even engines or toolboxes featured in other ones. Yeah, I think Dark Scorpion. Dark Scorpion is definitely not an archetype at this point. We just got the Don Zalug and the Burglars, and I guess I should have done the Burglars artwork. Can 2 cards be counted as an archetype? Technically, yes, and I think that that's one of the problems in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is just it's cards that reference other cards by name. Because there's a whole bunch of functional decks that can happen, but they don't fall under the archetype designation. So like vampires are an archetype, but zombies are very playable right now. Zombies are their own deck, but I have trouble explaining that. And then there's like card series that the tunes and the spirits are card series that sort of function together. All the tunes have to be in the same deck to reach the critical mass with Toon World. But like the spirit monsters are more splashable. Then you get union monsters, which aren't really an archetype, but they do go together because they reference each other, but they don't really reference the union mechanic. And then there's card lore. Swamp Battle Guard and Lava Battle Guard aren't really an archetype. They're just there for the lore. That's a thought. But Toon Alligator, which is not a toon. That's true. This is just something that's been on my mind, is trying to figure it out. Because as we progress through the game, I think it's going to be more refined. Right now it's just for fun and a little bit silly, because these are the archetypes that technically exist and could be considered. But there's going to be a lot more of them as we progress. Specifically, like, I'd say GX is when they really start coming into fruition, but Gravekeepers are the first real one. Just D type. I don't know. I don't know. Love the idea, though. Me too. Thank you. This is just something that I've been thinking about. This is why it's labeled something else. This isn't a real list or an idea, but something that's been on my mind. And I think there will be like an archetype checkup segment every once in a while until we get to GX, and then we'll be doing an archetype checkup every single one. Like an archetype checkup whenever an archetype gains new support. That way we get it running in the back of our minds, what the current card pool is. Because it really shows a lot of the complexity when the game changes design space towards it. But that's something for the future. Just wanted to float the idea. Thank you for coming. We're out of time for tonight, though. So, really appreciate the support. Something I'm gonna keep thinking about in the future. But for now, good night. Hope everyone sleeps well. I need to go.